A violent rainstorm raged through the night. On a mist-shrouded mountaintop, in the heart of a dense, deserted forest, stood an old wooden cabin, isolated like a scar from the past. Inside that cabin lived Mr. Cole, a former soldier who had faced death countless times, now living in solitude for the past 20 years. No family, no neighbors, no phone, no connection to anyone. He was like a shadow, a man forgotten by the world. But at 3 o'clock in the morning that night, there came a knock at the door. Soft, then urgent, a sound that did not belong in this place. He opened the door, and the scene before him froze his entire being. 10 newborn babies lay silently on the wet ground. Each was wrapped in a white cloth, as soft and pale as snow. They did not cry. They were not afraid. They simply opened their deep, black eyes and stared directly at him, as if they had known him for a very long time. No one had brought them. No footprints in the mud. No vehicle. No sign of a person. No sound but the rain tapping against the rusted metal roof. Mr. Cole stepped back. His heart pounded, not from fear, but because of a dream. That very dream. For years, he had seen this exact vision. 10 babies. The door. The rain. And those eyes. Who brought them here? And, why me? He whispered. There was no answer. But in that moment, a soldier who had once been abandoned stood at the edge of a new destiny, one even harsher than the battlefield he had survived. Tot. Dick Teep Doan Van Sau. Mr. Cole used to be a name written down in the notebooks of high-ranking commanders. He was part of an elite special operations unit, the kind that carried out classified missions along the northern border in the early 2000s. His teammates called him the Phantom of the Green because he had never failed a mission. On one final assignment, however, his team was ambushed. He was the only one who made it out alive, with more than 7 pieces of shrapnel in his body, a broken leg, and blurred vision in one eye. After 2 months in a coma, he woke up in a military hospital. The title, Silent Hero, was quietly acknowledged, but no one was there to welcome him back. He was discharged and returned to a small house in the countryside, with a medal in his pocket and a crooked leg that gave him a limp with every step. His wife, the woman who had once cried uncontrollably as she waved him off, now looked at him like a stranger. Her parents believed he had returned with nothing but a broken body and an eerie silence. They said it outright. Soldiers are only good for fighting. Out here, in the real world, they are worthless. His wife did not argue. She quietly packed her belongings, picked up their small child, and left on a rainy afternoon that looked exactly like the night before. From that moment on, Mr. Cole chose to vanish from society. He left the town and moved into the crumbling wooden cabin on the mountain, a place passed down from his grandfather. No one came, no one visited, and he did not allow himself to reach out to anyone. He lived like a shadow, a soldier who once stood in the middle of gunfire, now lying low in the wilderness, cooking his own food, treating his own wounds, talking only to himself. Some nights, he would have that strange dream, 10 newborn babies lying at his doorstep. No crying, no trembling, just staring at him in silence. Every time he had that dream, he would wake up drenched in sweat, and each time, he believed more and more that he was nothing more than the world's leftover, an outdated relic no one needed anymore. The greatest pain a soldier can endure is not the wounds of war, but being forgotten. Forgotten by the country they gave their youth to. Forgotten by the family they once vowed to protect with their lives. Forgotten by the woman they wrote dozens of love letters to while waiting for the next mission order. Mr. Cole did not blame anyone. He simply stayed silent, like every soldier trained to endure, no complaints, no retreat. But that very silence made the world believe he no longer existed. Until last night, and now, with 10 mysterious children sleeping on the damp wooden floor, once again, the forgotten soldier would face another kind of battle, not with bullets and guns, but with a choice: to continue turning his back on the world, or to step forward and protect something even greater than his own life. Tot. Dick Teep Doan Van Sau. After that fateful moment, Mr. Cole could not sleep again. The 10 babies remained silent inside the cold wooden room. Not a single one cried. No signs of hunger, thirst, spasms, or fear. Strangely enough, they seemed familiar with the space. As if this was home. He sat in the corner, the flickering oil lamp reflecting off his weary eyes. For the first time in years, the house did not feel silent anymore. The gentle breathing of those tiny beings seemed to thaw a heart that had been frozen since the day his wife and child walked away. This was the same wooden cabin left to him by his grandfather, a former high-ranking officer who lived in isolation after the war. Never married, had no children except Mr. Cole's father. Before passing, his grandfather left only one cryptic sentence: "If one day this house is awakened, you will understand why it was built on the mountain." Back then, Mr. Cole was young and did not pay attention. The house was deep in the mountains. Isolated, no electricity, no running water, the path treacherous. Everyone thought his grandfather was eccentric. But after everything that had happened, Mr. Cole chose to come here, to hide, and to forget. And now, that very house, forgotten by the world, had become the only place holding something no one could explain. The next morning, he began inspecting the entire house. No phone signal, no internet. The mountain road had collapsed after the storm, making it impossible to call for help. But strangely, he had no intention of calling anyone. He started doing something he never thought he would: taking care of the babies. He cooked rice porridge using old grains, boiled water over dry firewood. He laid each child on the mattress he usually slept on, rotating them, sharing time by the hour to keep them warm. But the next strange thing happened. The 10 babies never cried, never seemed hungry. They just lay there, like tiny moving statues, eyes open, observing, blinking slowly before drifting to sleep. On the third day, Mr. Cole discovered a small hidden basement behind the house, one he had been forbidden to approach as a child. The entrance was concealed behind a bush and a rotting wooden plank. When he removed the plank, he found a rusted steel padlock. On it was a strange symbol, 2 intertwined letters, GA. Using an old crowbar, he broke the lock. Inside, he found a steel cabinet full of sealed files marked with the insignia of a military research unit. An old cassette player with an undamaged recording tape. A handwritten journal, the handwriting unmistakably familiar, his grandfather's. In the journal, his grandfather had written about a top-secret project called Genesis Alpha, a post-war genetic cloning program for super soldiers. However, the project was shut down for violating humanitarian ethics. "We can clone strength," one entry read, "but we cannot clone the soul. These 10 children are the final hope." If you are reading this, perhaps the world is on the verge of repeating its mistake. Mr. Cole closed the journal. His hands trembled, his eyes burned, not with fear, but because something deep within him had begun to awaken. This house was not a meaningless hideout. It was the final legacy of a war that had never truly ended. And these 10 children could very well be the last living beings who carry a secret that might change the world. Mr. Cole no longer believed this was an accident or some kind of twisted prank. Those 10 children were not just abandoned infants. Ever since they arrived, everything around him had changed. The silence that had cloaked the house for 20 years was gone. A place that once buried memories had now become a gateway to something never seen before. He began observing carefully, cautiously, like a soldier tracking enemy footprints deep in the jungle. These children were not like normal newborns. They did not cry at night. They did not fuss. They did not need to be fed constantly. Their eyes were open far earlier than expected, staring straight into his with unsettling focus. Their tiny hands could clasp together, reacting to even the slightest sound as if they had already learned from within the womb. But what sent chills down his spine was the mark behind each child's neck, perfectly round. In the exact same spot on all of them, as if stamped. One day, while sorting through his grandfather's old belongings, Mr. Cole found the ancient cassette tape. He played it, and a familiar voice crackled to life, shaky, but unmistakably clear. It was his grandfather, the man who had kept this house a secret for decades. His voice was slow, deliberate, as he spoke about the top-secret project Genesis Alpha, a post-war genetic replication experiment. But this time, the story was different. These children were not weapons. They were the result of a long, quiet journey to make amends. According to his grandfather, each child had been created through advanced biotechnology, each one holding a unique gift, superior memory. heightened empathy, frequency perception, reflex control, special immunity. Each child was a piece of a greater puzzle, a collective humanitarian consciousness, meant to be the final test for humanity's future. Mr. Cole jumped from his seat and made his way to the old basement behind the house, the one he had once been forbidden to approach. Every step made his hands shake. The steel door was rusted but still locked. He broke it open. Inside were the cabinet, the cassette, and the thick journal. Just as before, he flipped through the pages, reading them with a sense of urgency. Every line matched the voice in the tape. And then came the revelation that sent a shiver through him. These 10 children were the final products of the Genesis Alpha project, stolen and hidden to prevent their destruction. They were not born to serve war, but to protect humanity from its own destructive instincts. As days passed, Mr. Cole noticed something even more extraordinary. The children seemed to know when he entered the room. They all turned their heads toward him in unison. Even without a sound, the boy labeled GO3 began making strange noises, as if trying to speak. At first, Mr. Cole thought it was a fluke, but the second time, the child clearly uttered, "Ga, PHA," a sound that could not be random. He searched through the journal again. At the end, his grandfather had written one final note. Alpha is only to be awakened when facing a national threat, or upon receiving a signal from the old world. His heart pounded. This was no longer just a personal mystery. This could shake entire systems. And maybe someone already knew. The next morning, while making his rounds outside, he discovered unfamiliar footprints. Not his, not the children's. Military boots, the specialized kind. The prints circled the house 3 times, then vanished. No motorcycles, no tire marks. Then he found it, a micro-surveillance camera hidden beneath the staircase. Someone knew, and they were watching. Mr. Cole did not panic. His combat instincts surged. He ripped the camera out and crushed it. He began checking the defenses around the house, the muscle memory from years of tactical training still sharp in every move. But he did not expect the deepest wound to come from someone he once knew. One afternoon, while he was preparing a fire to cook porridge, a rugged off-road vehicle pulled up 100 yards from the cabin. A woman stepped out, his ex-wife, the one who had left him 2 decades ago. Her eyes were cold, her expression skeptical. She said nothing but one sentence. "I heard, you're raising kids?" Then she stepped inside and saw them, 10 children lying silently on the wooden floor. Eyes wide open, gazing at the ceiling like they were watching something invisible. She turned to him and said, "These are not your children. What are you thinking? Give them back to wherever they came from. You cannot even care for one child, let alone 10. He said nothing. He simply picked one up and placed the baby gently in her arms. The child did not cry. It just looked at her, with a gaze so hauntingly calm. "They are not like anyone," he said, "but they are the last remnants of a history erased from human memory." That night, Mr. Cole dreamed again, but it was not the usual dream. This time, it was a laboratory, blinding white lights, 10 children inside glass chambers. A man in a white lab coat approached. A familiar face. It was his brother, the one who had joined him on that final mission at the border. "Cole," the man said in the dream, "we were wrong. Genesis should never have existed. But hiding them? That's suicide." He jolted awake, his heart pounding, his back drenched in sweat. It was not a dream. It was a memory, a missing piece he had tried to forget. The next morning, he stepped outside. On the wooden door was a red X, an unmistakable mark. A target symbol used by the Erasure Squad, a secret unit once commanded by people like his brother. He knew now, he was being hunted, but unlike the battlefield, this time he could not run, could not hide, and he absolutely could not leave anyone behind. The 10 children sleeping behind that door were lives, were hope, were the last fragments of a dream that had never come true. And if he did not stand now, everything he had sacrificed would be for nothing. That afternoon, he began reactivating the defense system around the house. Though it was just a modest wooden cabin, the mountainous terrain gave him the upper hand. He dug trenches, set traps, placed warning bells, and built elevated watchpoints. Every move was precise, efficient, like time had not dulled the instincts of a true special ops soldier. He did not say a word to the children, but somehow, they sensed it. That night, for the first time, all 10 held hands as they slept. No crying, no midnight waking. 3 days later, they came. No noise, no engines, no helicopters, just shadows moving silently through the forest. Each figure dressed in black, faces covered, carrying specialized equipment. Mr. Cole spotted them early through his scope but did not act immediately. 8-man team, split into 3 units. A classic flanking assault strategy, 2 sides closing in. 1 drawing fire head on. As the first group crossed the boundary, he triggered the smoke traps. White plumes burst from bamboo tubes, filled with a mild irritant that blinded their sight. As they staggered, he emerged, swift and silent, taking down 3 men with pinpoint strikes to the wrist and neck. Non-lethal, just enough to drop them. The second group adjusted fast, changing angle to approach from behind. But he was already waiting. Wires strung low across the path sent 2 of them tumbling. He was no longer young, but every move carried the weight of 100 battles fought hand to hand. When the third and main group burst through the door, he had already carried the children down to the basement. He locked it, hid the key. Now the wooden cabin above held only him, and the man who stepped in last. No helmet, no mask, no surprise, just deep eyes staring back at him, his own brother. Trung, you have not changed, Trung said calmly, still stubborn, still clinging to things that are not real. You have changed too much, Cole replied, gripping a wooden staff. From soldier to executioner. Genesis Alpha was never meant to survive. Cole, it was never approved. You are protecting something uncontrollable. You do not know what they are. They are children, and I know better than you, because I was the only one who stayed. Trung sighed, pulled a pistol from his waistband, not aiming it, just placing it on the table. No one wants to kill you. Just hand them over. We will handle the rest. Like how you handled my team at the border. Handed them over. Watched them get wiped out for national security. Silence. Trung said nothing. A long, heavy pause swallowed the room. Finally, Mr. Cole stepped forward, sat across from him. Do you remember what Grandpa used to say? That sometimes, to keep our humanity, we must choose what is right, not what is easy. Trung looked down. His hand trembled slightly. Then he looked up again, his gaze colder than before. I chose what is necessary. Cole, you chose false hope, but this world is not built on hope. And then, from beneath the floor, a sound rose, soft but unmistakable, a song. 10 voices, young and untrained, humming in harmony, a lullaby, an old melody. Both men stood up. Trung froze. That song. It was what their grandfather used to sing when they were kids. A lullaby in a tribal dialect, nearly forgotten. No one else knew it. No one, except family. You taught them that? Trung asked, his voice shaky. No, Cole said, eyes glassy. They already knew. In that moment, nothing else needed to be said. Genesis Alpha was not a failed project. It was a final blueprint to see if humanity could still hold onto its soul. And these children were the answer. Trung said no more. He retrieved his gun, ordered the team to withdraw. Before stepping off the porch, he turned back, his voice no longer cold. They will come again. Others, from higher up, from the government, you need to be ready. I have been ready for 20 years, Cole said, and shut the door. In the basement, the children kept singing, out of tune, off rhythm, but alive. That night, Mr. Cole did not sleep. He wrote in his old notebook, just below his grandfather's last line, we can clone strength, but we cannot clone the soul. And he added, but we can nurture it, with faith, sacrifice, and compassion. 3 days after the confrontation with Trung, not a single person appeared near the cabin. The forest returned to its untouched state, as if nothing had ever happened. But Mr. Cole knew, the silence this time was not peace. It was the calm before a far greater storm. The children remained the same. They ate, slept, and looked at him with quiet eyes full of connection. Since the night they sang together, he noticed a change. They began communicating through eye contact. No need for words, no need for gestures. They simply understood who was hungry, who was cold, who needed to be held. their emotions synchronized like one single system. Mr. Cole spent an entire afternoon rereading his grandfather's journal, and tucked in the middle, among pages he had skimmed before, thinking they were just old memories, was a section that stopped his breath. Genesis Alpha was only the first stage, a humanitarian trial. But in the shadows, they created Genesis Omega, not to heal, but to control. They are the reverse, soulless, no love, no fear, no pain. They do not need food, do not sleep, do not need caretakers. Each child born in the lab is a flawless replica, with no memory, no conscience. They are trained to be tools. I tried to stop it, but failed. I took Alpha and hid them, but Omega still sleeps deep in the research vault within the Red Forest. If they awaken, everything ends. Mr. Cole sat still for nearly an hour. One question echoed in his mind. Why had Grandpa never told him this? And why had he only now found this page? Then it hit him. The journal page had been sewn in, stitched differently from the others. Someone had hidden it, and maybe Grandpa had known. When his grandson was ready, the truth would reveal itself. That night, Mr. Cole dreamed of his grandfather again. But this time, the old man said nothing. He simply stood in the forest, pointing east, toward the mist-covered ridge. The next morning, Mr. Cole carefully sealed all the documents in a waterproof pouch and buried them beneath the basement floor. He packed a backpack, brought along dry rations, an old map, and the army knife from years past. Before leaving, he knelt beside the children. I do not know if I will make it back in time, he said, but if something happens, remember this, you are not alone. Never. The children said nothing. They just looked at him. And for the first time, one of them reached out and gently touched the scar on his wrist. That touch nearly broke him. Mr. Cole began the journey into the Red Forest, a restricted area once marked on old military maps with 3 overlapping red circles. He had heard rumors back in the day that it housed experimental biological labs, but no one knew the exact location. After 3 days of trekking through woods, climbing mountains, crossing rivers, he found it, a massive rock cave, its inner wall lined with artificial concrete now covered in moss. He pried open the door with a crowbar. There was no power, but it was not dark. Bioluminescent lights still glowed, powered by sealed core batteries. He stepped inside, a long, icy hallway, the smell of chemicals and rust. The deeper he went, the heavier the air became. And then, he stopped in front of a bulletproof glass door. Behind it was Genesis Omega. 10 glass chambers, 10 small, motionless bodies, each child floating in pale green fluid, faces blank. Heart monitors, if they even had hearts, showed no signs. But the status lights beneath each pod glowed green, which meant they were still alive. He stepped closer to pod number 03, a boy. The face looked exactly like Alpha 03 back home. So identical, it made his skin crawl. Not individual clones, he whispered. Mirror twins. They were opposites. Alpha was light. Omega was shadow. One raised through love and connection, the other programmed with logic and command. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. Unauthorized data retrieval detected. He turned. A man in a white lab coat, thick glasses, hunched back, stood at the door. Dr. Lamb, the scientist once thought to have disappeared after the Genesis project. Mr. Cole had seen his name in Grandpa's notes. Who are you? Cole demanded. I am the creator of Genesis Omega, and I have been waiting for you. Waiting for me? Because you are the final link. The Alpha 10 child has reacted. That only happens when Omega receives a signal. The balance is broken, and I need you to choose. Choose what? Destroy everything, or connect them. Cole clenched his fists. He trusted no one. But Dr. Lamb continued. Alpha cannot survive if Omega dies. They are one. If you destroy Omega, Alpha will decay. But if you merge the two systems, a third generation may emerge, the evolved human. Cole hesitated. Then why did you not do it yourself? Because I have no heart. I am only the maker. But you lived with them, understood them, loved them. Only you can decide. Mr. Cole took a step back, eyes scanning the 10 pods. If what the doctor said was true, He now stood at the threshold of a decision that would shape not only the lives of 10 children, but the fate of all humanity. But he did not speak. Instead, he pulled out a tape recorder, pressed play. The same lullaby from that night filled the lab, 10 children from Alpha singing their ancestral song in unison. No teacher, no guide, just memory. And he knew, if the children could remember his grandfather's lullaby, they could remember so much more. He looked at Dr. Lamb. I will bring Omega back. You will raise both systems? No, I will let them live together. And let them decide for themselves. Time passed faster than Mr. Cole had expected. Just a few months after the truth about Genesis Alpha and Omega came to light, the once forgotten cabin on the mountain became the center of research, debate, and division. Some called it a miracle. Others called them mutants. Some plotted to commercialize it. Others wanted to make it a national symbol. But Mr. Cole, the man who started it all, remained silent. He refused awards, declined interviews, made no speeches. He still lived in the old cabin, waking each morning to light the fire, boil water, and care for the children as if they were just regular grandchildren. One morning, the child labeled Alpha 10, the one who had once been unable to speak, walked over to him, sat down, placed a small hand on his wrinkled one, and asked, "Am I human?" Mr. Cole looked up. The question pierced his heart. He had once asked himself the same thing, during war. When watching comrades fall. When seeing civilians caught in crossfire. When his own brother became a cold instrument of the system. He answered softly, slowly, "If you can feel love, if you can feel pain, if you keep your promises and fear hurting others, then you are human. No one needs to prove it for you." The boy said nothing, then nodded, a firm, deliberate nod. The Genesis children did not grow up perfect. Some made mistakes. Some were scared. Some were too sensitive for the noisy world outside. But it was those imperfections that made them more real, more human, and gave Mr. Cole something he had never fully felt in a lifetime of service: hope. One early spring morning, Mr. Cole sat on the front steps, looking out at the distant forest. A gentle breeze, a clear sky. The children played around the house, laughing and speaking in a special language only they understood. No more war, no more secrets, no more pain buried beneath the ground or locked in hidden vaults. Only laughter. And in that moment, he thought, maybe, just maybe, I did not live in vain. Even if I am just an old soldier, forgotten by the world. But if someone like me could do this, then maybe anyone can. The story ends here, but the biggest question has just begun. We, the people living in this noisy, rushed, divided era, do we still have the patience to listen to a silent child? Do we still have the courage to nurture something we do not understand? Do we still have enough faith to protect something no one has yet proven to be real? An old soldier, a broken wooden cabin, 10 children who are anything but ordinary, and they achieved something extraordinary, not with weapons, not with power, but by making one choice: not to turn their back on life. And what about you? If one day, you found yourself in the same situation, would you fight, or walk away? Would you raise, or erase? Do you have enough love to protect something the world does not yet believe in? Leave a comment. Do not stay silent, because sometimes, one sincere answer can save an entire generation.